To the brief topic number 3 is, what is your understanding of multipolarity? Are these imperialist entities or really just an opportunity to escape a unipolar world? This came with a link to Twitter. On Twitter, this tweet is from BRG, Black Red Guard 1. He says, proletarian revolution is greater than capitalist and socialist imperialist multipolarity. Lenin would read this trash into the ground. If you want to support various block of imperialists simply because they talk a better game, then go ahead, but don't call yourselves communists. The tweet goes on into a little bit of a thread here. He says, you cannot simply skim a few books, take excerpts out of context, or even worse, listen to people in your revisionist party who don't know what they're talking about and say you have a communist position. He goes on to say multipolarity is a geopolitical term. It means that several rival imperialist powers compete with each other for dominance. China engages in backyardism in the South Pacific and Southern Asia. The U.S. wants to cling to Latin America and the Caribbean after being run out of the Middle East. Russia wants to dominate Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. All three want Africa. He says these squabbles are between capitalist ruling classes. The workers in all countries see high prices, wars on the horizon, increased totalitarianism, surveillance, and general fuck shit. Revisionists want to continue this dance. Communists want to end it. So there's the thread. Let me start with Carl. Carl, what say you to this? What is your understanding of multipolarity?
So my understanding of multipolarity is that you have different opposing, powers, different poles. You got a, North Pole, South Pole. You got an Eastern Bloc, a Western Bloc, so on and so forth. That's kind of what my understanding of multipolarity is. Um, and I think that a multipolar world is definitely something that we want. We don't want as it exists right now, where there's one global superpower and there's nothing against them. I think that's definitely a bad thing. Monopolies are not good. Even monopoly of an economic monopoly, a military monopoly. I don't. That's not a good thing to have. So I think that a multipolar world is definitely something that is desirable. I think. Um, these and understand that the African continent is caught in the middle of these different feuding factions, whether it's Western, or we have the new imperialist bloc, the BRICS movement. Uh, this is something that no United States has basically shown itself to be a bully, and China, Russia, other countries they're not going to tolerate that anymore. So it's the idea that the United States is going to continue to have full spectrum dominance over the rest of the world, that's not going to be an eternal thing. It hasn't even lasted what within our lifetimes, most of us. So I think that it's a multipolar world is desirable, but I also understand, like in the tweet was saying, there's going to be war. The United States is not going to let its dominance slide by without a war. We already see they're beginning to ramp up excuses to go to war with the Chinese, which I fear will be a nuclear war if it comes down to that. So yeah, I definitely understand that the need for two dominant. Well, I mean, let me think about it. Because do we really need a superpower, a global power that has the ability to project force anywhere in the world? Is that something that we need, or something that is even desirable? And you know, if that's something that we need, why can't it not? Why can't African people have our own pole? Why can't we have our own power? Because I understand why we don't, because if we do, that's going to shape the entire destiny of the world. That's going to change things completely, upside down. But just as though we had our own, we African people, we had our own poles, we had our own empires and our dominance of the world before, and I believe that we'll have it again. All right. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
I appreciate that, Carl. Let me mix it up here. Let me hear from Buana. Buana, what say you to this?
No, I think that Carl's this the definition of multipolarity was right on, and I think that when Gas talks about a multiverse rather than a universe, I understand what he means by that. So, because of the growing powers in the world, in terms of what Carl described, China and BRICS and all these other people collectively trying to come together to be an alternative power to what we have seen in the world. I think that we are headed towards that, and I think that there is going to be some scuffles, some major scuffles. But where I disagree with Carl is in terms of nuclear war. I think that these guys, well, the younger ones, not maybe not so much the older ones, but the younger ones, they love life. They love sleeping with young girls. Or sleeping with young boys. They love partying. They love drinking. They love sniffing drugs. So much so that they wouldn't want to risk losing all of that in terms of creating a nuclear war. Because a nuclear war is something that is definitive. It's definitive, and regardless of the fact that one country has uh, more nuclear weapons than the other, it only takes probably three nuclear weapons to change the face of how the world as we know it right now. Regardless of the fact that you could have 1 million, and I could just have three. You know what I mean? I could still change, the way you run your society, as you would probably be able to wipe me off the face of the planet. And I don't think that the men who are in charge of these weapons would want to create a situation like that. Just to say that we have the bigger stick. We have the bigger stick. So I think that, you know fortunately, I think that we are going to have to be able to share this world. Unfortunately, though, I think that Africa, or the black peoples of the world, has to be able to have a stake in the so-called multipolarity. We can't just be standing on the outside or standing to the shoreline wanting to get to the party, wishing we could get into the party. But because we have no collective power or no collective strength, we stay by the shoreline just watching these activities as they occur. You know what I mean? Trying to be non-aligned. That's the new word they have for us. Non-alignment, non-alignment. I think that, as I've been saying before, as Gavi been saying, and all other people been saying, black people been saying before all over the world, our collective power would put us in this whole competitive thing of multipolarity. We should have a say so in the natural state of the world affairs as anyone else does. And because we decide to be uh, separated and distinct, I think it makes us weaker. Whereas these guys are clicking up like a gang. They clicking up, and they are deciding to become dominant powers in the world, where we stay to the shoreline and decide not to participate because we have our own little small little enclave that we have control over. Instead of trying to eat the whole pie, we want to just dominate our little small little slice. And I think that that's not necessarily beneficial for us. I think that collectively we need to get together and click up as other peoples of the world are, and do our thing and have a safe soul in this so-called multipolar world or multiverse, as the brothers would suggested. But that's my spiel on that particular thing.
I want to say shout out to Jose out in the chat. Uh, he said Buana believes we are dealing with humans after all these beasts did, do, and will do. Um, Buana, before you completely step off, uh, how do you respond to Trigger Happy here? He says, now, how do we exit the unipolar? How can we create an African bloc? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would suggest, and this is only a suggestion, follow the example of the people who are successful. Success leaves clues. If China is able to foster and create this so-called idea of multipolarity. If BRICS is exerting themselves in the world, BRICS, the countries, Brazil, Russia, etc., 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 is clicking up and trying to create this idea of multipolarism. I think that we could use some of these examples, not necessarily putting a Chinese suit on an African person, but using some of the things that would have made them successful, and take note of it and try to implement it in our countries. Some of these places are China. It decided from a long time ago to decide to make everything in the world. They decide to make they decide to be the producers of everything that the capitalist countries wanted to buy. They decided to be the producers of it. So they decided to become factory heavy. And I understand that Africans don't necessarily want to become industrialized or have industry factories all over Africa, but we must find some way to be competitive. And I think that success leaves clues, and I think that we could research and look into the examples of all the other peoples in the world who has forced it and forced this multipolarity and implement some of these ideas in our respective countries, and also take it from our respective countries. And like I say, click up. The Caribbean been talking forever. We've been talking forever in this nonsense called CARICOM. And in terms of, and all these guys, they sit on their little small little enclaves to say, well, I won't be the king of my island. And you have more than almost maybe 50 million people collectively in the Caribbean. That is political and economic strength you can't buy. And if you couple that with Africa and Brazil, which is probably 80 million people strong, could you imagine the kind of economic voice and political voice in the world that you could possibly have? And I think that we need to decide to. The face of Brazil is not a black one, even though Brazil has more than 100 million people, more than the United States. And the face of Brazilians is not a black one yet. Come on, man. Come on, man. I think that the people need to have the will now. No, it's enough. I think that we have seen and we had enough of backseat driving in the world already. We already had enough of being the sidekick of the world, the sidekick. Now it's time for us to get in the driver's seat and decide and have the will to say, now we won't be able to drive or be the drive one of the driving forces in the world as well. And it takes a balls to do that. So if we go into we must have the balls to do it and have the will to do it. Have the will to do it and the balls to do it. And I don't think that we have decided to do that yet. No matter the consequences, because China had the consequences of deciding to be a so-called might in the world. They have consequences to that. Russia decided, and they have consequences to that, and they decided to accept the consequences, but we're gonna still go forward anyways. And I think that as us as black men, we must have the same kind of will as well. You know what I mean? No, it's enough time being comfortable in the plantation. Now the slaves have to be able to have the responsibility of freedom and being self-determined in the world as well, and having to say so. So I think that until we decide and come to that point, we'll always be playing backseat, playing sidekick too, whatever happens in the world. So that's my opinions on that.
Let's have from Tanzan. What's your understanding of multipolarity? Are these imperialist entities or really just an opportunity to escape a unipolar world?
Oh, that's a whole wonderful, but well, I guess having two poles is better than one. I would say that it's a reprieve for us for a bit. It's the time for us to, to work on our strengths, while it's a distraction for, for other people at the time. If you have just one person, there's not much that you can do because you're constantly under, their watch. But if there are several, competing factions, it gives you a little bit of a breathing space to think about what you can do, in the meantime. So it's a sad thing that, as this is going on, a war is breaking out again in Sudan, but that's a different matter. But when two of the multipolars are at it, this is a time when we should also be creating our own regional alliances and bodies. And once again, EAC, we have been working on that, creating a sort of regional cooperation between countries and borders and so on. So I understand the importance of having nuclear weapons and so on. That would be great. If we could do that. In fact, we just launched a satellite, Kenya, woohoo. But those are good steps, but it would take us a long time to get to where we're going. I think that the most important thing is to take care of your people for as long as you can, and then give them the tools that they need, to create those defense systems in the subsequent generations. So I think that it works for us as Africans, as people who are still not on the top of the world stage just yet. And this is an opportunity that we should use to be, to be learning, to be leveraging, to be able to, to make the best position and to be able to, to not, well, obviously you're not going to just put it out there, but you have a stronger position when, there's competition. So I think we should focus on getting ourselves together, not just Africans in the continent. I think that it's a good opportunity for Caribbeans and Africans, and also Africans in America to start looking at those opportunities, because what happens if things go in a different direction? What if things that were guaranteed are not there anymore? You should have second and third plans, just in case. So I think that where the world is going right now, nobody knows for sure. But having more options, especially in terms of trading partners, economic opportunities, and so on, that to me would be great. It would be more impressive if people are traveling to create businesses rather than just to travel and to see things. You should go somewhere with an aim to making money, to having a network system, having people that from other places. So instead something happens, you have a place to you have options. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Tan. Let's welcome in our boy, Real Black Gentleman. Real Black Gentleman, how are you this week?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Sir,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
I want to. One thing I wanted to add on to was the topic before. Have you ever heard of the book Sankofa Super Herus? I'm gonna write it out in the chat. It's a book. I bought this book. It's a children's book that it's basically talking about African heroes and heroines. And it's an animated book. You know what I'm saying? It's not very big. It's maybe about 20 pages. 20 pages. 20 pages long. Sankofa Super Herus. All right, that's the name. I just put it in the chat. It's a really nice book. I would recommend it sincerely. It's to the point. It has like Nat Turner. It's written by you know what I'm saying, black person. You know what I'm saying. It's a great book. Going to Multipolarity. Yeah, as far as Africa's concerned, you know what I'm saying, Africa don't have a pole. So like a lot of talk about it. I mean, a lot of times I speak on regionalism, but when we're talking about like, I see regionalism as just like the foundation of a total black, African unity. So if we're talking about polarity, Africa has to build its own pole. And what's going to happen with that is that, you know what I'm saying, someone's going to be more center, and people are going to revolve around that entity, and that's going to be the $1 million question: who's going to be the pole and who's going to spin around it. I mean, and this is where I wish Africa had time. It's not impossible. I just think that as long as relative African national politics go at its pace, at their relative paces, compared to the world, I just see everyone picking Africa apart. you know, I that's all I see. I see, you know, the world picking it apart, and, you know, playing one against the other, just trying to find cleavage and find, you know, rifts, and just, you know, get in where they fit in. And so the only way for Africa to not be torn, you know, I almost see, when I think of multipolarity, I almost see them as, you know, like whirlpools or eddies, in which, you know, like multiple ones in water, in which, you know, things are going to flow towards one. You know, there's going to be, you know, the vortex is going to be is like the pole, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like Africa, if Africa doesn't get its own rotation, its own sense of, I mean, this is, I hate to use the word revolution about itself, I mean, and can get a sense of, you know, greater African, a business about itself for other regions around the world outside of it to kind of get sucked into its wheel well, then, you know, there's going to be no real African pole. That's my, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's, you know, and the thing is, like, with poles, I mean, it's like if you know anything about what am I trying to say? Magnetism. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, you know, when poles start to shift around, you might get like fake poles. You're like, you know what I'm saying, areas where there's like a weak polar strength that isn't like the true pole. But that's just until the true pole gets itself straight. So, like, a lot of it is just readjusting, because you only have two poles generally. You have one pole, I mean, in the natural world, you have one pole and you have its opposite. Unless you're talking about, you know what I'm saying, bodies rotating out in space, and they're spinning around on more than one axis. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But usually there's a major axis, and, you know what I'm saying, there's, you know, in, you know, residual, like, little, you know, Africa, if you know what I'm saying, if Africa doesn't, you know, cannot seem to redefine itself, you know, relative to the outside world, it's going to once again just get picked apart. I mean, I don't want that to happen. I want Africa to be whole. I mean, it won't necessarily get there. I don't see it happening in like in the Nkrumah way. I just think that, you know, it's going to have to the cohese in its own little way of having regions. And from those regions, you can start to you'll have fewer moving parts, as it were. And once you have fewer moving parts, you can start connecting things. But I mean, Africa is, I mean, East and West, you know, Central and South is going to have to like talk to each other and say, you know, compare notes and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. Like, you know what I'm saying? The AU in and of itself is like, it's like the AU, I find to be like, it's not really like, it doesn't really do it. I mean, Africa would have to start over and to really even have its own like true, sincere, authentic, for real, like, you know, continental agency to actually like have geopolitical like pull, so it can be its own pole. I mean, that's all.
I appreciate that, real black gentleman. Like Jose in the chat said, he said, I like Mr. RBG. You can hear him think when he speaks. Appreciate that. There's a lively back and forth going on in the chat as well. You guys make sure check it out. Drop your comments if you feel to. That takes us to Oni from the pro-black perspective. Oni, what say you to this?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me just tell people to keep being broke. They wait about my pockets. You know what I'm saying?
I leave. See, I know in a chat or a platform full of New Yorkers, and New Yorkers love blood sport. So I don't even get into the mix with their brothers. You know what I mean? They love blood sport. It is what it is, man.
Yeah, man. Look, man. All I know is that I got me some money. I don't give a fuck what I do with it. But as far as the multipolarity thing, that reminds me of, like, if you saw, like, I guess some people didn't pay attention to the thread. I didn't see people comment on the thread, but that's the imagination versus reality thing I'm talking about. You know, like the guy's talking about, well, a socialist revolution, a proletariat revolution is better than is better than a multipolarity world, right? And it's like, I don't, you know, you're not going to get like you have to deal with reality, right? And reality is that you have America and like, I don't know, 10,000 nuclear warheads, right? You know, you have China with its, I don't know, 1,000, 5,000 nuclear warheads, whatever. You got Russia with its so many warheads. And then you have these people like, fuck both of them. Let's have a workers dictatorship. Like real life. Real life is you have different nation states around the world that are arming themselves to the teeth to potentially destroy each other, destroy the environment, and so on and so forth. And instead of dealing with engaging in that, right, we have African people who are like, well, I would much prefer something. It's like, yeah, of course you would much prefer something else. And that's what I mean. Like when we talk about, you know, the idea of ideas and all that kind of stuff, like, yes, you have good idea. Like you could easily have a good idea. What about if everybody just, you know, like did like the bonobos and just gave somebody a hug tomorrow? Like, okay, sure. Right. That's a good idea, but that's not going to happen. Or not even say it's not going to happen, but where you are right now, or even like, I'll say it this way. Speaking of agents, right? Adam Clayton Powell Jr., that's an agent, right? Adam Clayton Powell Jr. is like, what's in your hand? What is in your hand? What is in your hand? Like you can't keep, you know, well, this would be good. This would be good. If I only had, no, what's in your hand? Use what's in your hand. Or as I guess another, well, I wouldn't call my agent, but Booker T. Washington said, cast your bucket where you are. You know, of the man who might be starving or something, you know, drowning in the water, or sorry, they're surrounded by water and they're thirsty. And it's like, cast your bucket when you are. Now, granted, you shouldn't really. Oh, it was like a clear lake. It wasn't even like an ocean or something. It was just like a clear lake, and they were just, I'm so thirsty, you know. But this is what I mean by reality. Like, is it a question of do we want a multipolar world? Do we want a like? It doesn't matter what you want. You came into this world in the 1980s, the 1990s, the 1970s. You did not come into this, like, you came into the world at that point, and you were a child then. And then now it's 2023. You're a full grown ass adult. You finally are paying attention to the geopolitical world. And your observation shouldn't be, well, it would be nice if things went a different way. Yeah, sure. But there's 400, 500 years of human history that make it so that it's where we are right now. And of course, you want to go somewhere else, but you cannot get caught up in the ideas that are in books. You can't get caught up in the ideas that you imagine are true in regards to Africa pre-colonially, or Africa, you know, in the colonial, you know, like, you can't get caught up in that stuff. You just have to engage the planet as it is, and move accordingly. Now, of course, do you want to make it better? Sure. Do you want to push it towards some other sort of great capacity? Absolutely. But notwithstanding that, don't forget where you are. You know what I mean? That said, you know, as far as how do we get to Africa taking itself, like, yeah, we have to be serious about Pan-Africanism. We have to be serious about African nationalism. We have to be serious about who's serious. You know, we can't have like you know, no shade, but we can't have, you know, goofies, you know, who are just pre-colonial and Newtonian. You can't have that, because you're not going to go anywhere with that. You know, if you want to advance as a people, we have to be serious about how the world is, and like how Buana said, how other people are advancing. You know, the mindset of, well, you know, did we do that 1,000 years ago? What we did 1,000 years ago, we got kicked, like our asses got handed to us from people who were 1,000 years less advanced than the people that are today. Okay. And I'm not being literal about 1,000 years, although technically I am, because the Arabs did move in on Africa. But what I'm saying is that, you know, realistically, if it didn't work 1,000 fucking years ago, it's not going to work today. What works today is what works today. And I could just say, in the words of Malcolm X, if you ever see somebody more successful than you, they're doing something that you are not doing. You know? And I guess you could just, sorry, let me just, just reinforce what I was saying earlier. If you, actually I could just do the definition of craziness, right? The quote unquote definition that people got from a video game or whatever. But because, I don't know, they got it from, I think Einstein might have said it too. But isn't the definition of craziness is trying to do the same thing and then expecting a different result, So we have to understand, yes, we came from a nice past and you want to keep some elements of it. Absolutely. But it's in the words of the Akan, I guess. It's Sankofa. And what does Sankofa mean? It means looking back to move forward, but not really moving backwards. It's moving forward while looking back, or understanding what you must take with you. Some people have the bird has an egg on its back or something, right? Understanding what you must take with you, but of course, leaving some things behind. And a lot of us don't seem to grasp that. And if you really pay attention to the people who make, false accusations of who's a agent or whatever, you pay attention to them, they're wildly inconsistent and wildly misinformed. But that's the world we live in, where a lot of what passes for currency in the Black conscious circle is just nonsense. And this is why I, try to stress, look, let's just be at minimum, let's just be realistic. And I'll just leave it at that.
I appreciate that. Only in the chat, Gaston Up said multipolarity is akin to the multiverse in the sense that we transition from the universal Kantian Newtonian system to the quantum system. Now, why have we not been provided quantum technologies? He said, same reason the Muzungu ain't gonna just allow bricks a multipolarity. Lero's in the chat still. She says, we don't understand war for real. We've experienced it, but we don't understand it. We don't get nationalism. Trigger Happy 262 says, I don't think this is mutually exclusive. We have to engage in reality to subvert reality. Africans being free requires subverting another man's reality. Gas him up says, if you want to advance, have sex with advanced women in Tanzania. All right, guys.
Look, that's the first thing that he said that made sense. That's the first thing he said that made sense, because the other thing was just total nonsense, but okay.
Nama X says, I love how our people are trying to look for our solutions outside of history. Ha, ha, ha. Does anyone else want to add any last thoughts on this prompt?
Well, let me just say this. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. So, yeah, that's the thing I'm talking about. Like these, we call it academies, right? When somebody just like the adage, I think Clinton won an election based off of saying, basically KISS, which is keep it simple, stupid, right? I think his motto was like, it's the economy, stupid, something like that, right? But that's the thing that a lot of us get caught up in academies, like false, like pseudo academics, like people who don't really understand things. So it's like they throw a bunch of words, multipolarity is akin to the multiverse in the sense that we transition from the universal Kantian Newtonian system to the quantum system. Now, what do we brought it? Like, it's just the dumbest thing. Like, if somebody who understands physics, right? This is just stupid. It's just nonsense. It's just like mouth vomit. It's not something that somebody would actually say to effectively communicate. There's this older lady named Ruth Shays, right? She passed away, but obviously she said something along the lines of, if you have to use 33 words to say something that I could say in 8 words, doesn't make you intelligent, right? You like keep it simple, stupid. And the reason why people use this kind of language, I want people to understand this. The reason why people use this kind of language because they're not saying anything. Because if people understand what quantum means, that's a measurement, right? That's a degree of measurement, right? That's when you enter into the particle, when particle and wave like behavior intermingle. So just entering it in this conversation doesn't even make any sense from a person who actually understands physics. But because they can throw these words and some people don't know physics like I would, right? It's like, yeah, man, that's some deep shit, and it's not. And this has been going on in the Black community forever. You know, these are actually the historical grifters, the no disrespect to the 5%ers, but the 5% people, the Nation of Islam people, the so on and so forth. They would take advantage of Black ignorance, right? And Malcolm X said this about Elijah Muhammad. They would take advantage of Black ignorance in order to seem smart. But like people who are not ignorant, people who are informed say, why in the world would you even mouth vomit that? And they just kind of like tune them out. As far as, you know, and again, I don't know about this whole, again, I mean, having sex with women is just a normal thing that humans do. I don't know, like if you meet a woman and you want to have sex with her, have sex with her. Like it's not even I don't see the big deal that people are making about sex. Like it doesn't even make like people have sex. I don't even know why, like what mindset people have to say, oh, shame on you, you had sex. Like if you marry a woman and you're not having sex, like that's a problem, right? You know what I mean? Like, and of course I would love to, like I was dating women for marriage, but you know, I already married a woman, and you know, she had her issues or whatever. So like, yeah, you have to make sure the goods are good. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's straight up. But anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. But that's probably, but like realistically, I'm just saying that's like the most important thing that the most important topic I can see guys speaking about is my sex life. So I'm okay with that.
You can't let him get under your skin, man. Honestly, he's obviously trolling. Just ignore that stuff, man. He's obviously trolling.
My skin? Nah, ain't nobody getting under my skin.
Just come on, just ignore him, man. He's not really saying anything of value.
Gas put him away. I have no criticism of Gas. Gas is free to express his views and ideas, even though it may differ from my brother Oni. I ain't worrying about Gas. I worry about the other safe people. See, there are safe people who comes on and comments, and they stay safe in the comment section and don't come on and share their views in the marketplace ideas where we can contend and weigh and measure what they have to say publicly, but they could stay so safely. Yeah, and this person who know who I addressing, they could stay so safely in the comment section and be critical and write 7-pound essays after we done finished and talking. But I just leave it as it is, man. Y'all safe. Y'all safe to throw y'all little jobs and throw y'all peanuts from the peanut gallery. Never to come on and really contend with grown men on the panel. I'll leave it there.
All right. Shout out to Brother Bakari out there in the chat. Yeah, so since there's no last words, let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 4 tonight.